Welcome to Character in Action with Matthew J. Norcross, the official podcast of the 7 Degrees of Change Foundation. Come journey with us on the real-life stories of character in action. And now here's your host, Matthew J. Norcross.
Welcome to Character in Action from the 7 Degrees of Change Foundation. I'm Matthew J. Norcross here in the studio with Carmen Ramirez. Hey, Carmen.
Hey, Matt. Thank you for having me.
All right. So, Carmen, if you didn't know, I interviewed Danny Oakley, who is the co-founder of a studio called Out of Our Minds Animation Studios with Robbie earlier this year. And this week, I'm interviewing his business partner, Keith Hobgood. He did the illustrations for a children's book series I do called The Phoenix, and he joins us now here in the studio. Keith, thanks for being on Character in Action.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. So we have you on the show today because you are the perfect example of character in action. Now, can you tell us more about yourself?
Well, I've been an illustrator for about 30 years, working with animation. And I really enjoy doing the storyboarding and the character design. And I work with a team that, takes my illustrations and then they turn them into 3D models and the finished animation. And I love to see what they do with them. And, they wait with bated breath on some of the things I turn out and some of the ideas. It's very collaborative, but it's a nice reward mechanism to work with that long with people. There are people I've worked with for 30 years, and we still, go about our business, and it's nice to grow with them.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention one thing. You've been in over 600 film festivals and had over 120 awards. What's that like?
Yeah, this is coming on the 20th anniversary of us being nominated for a British Academy Award. That time was surreal. The studio sent me to Denmark, to Turks and Caicos, to all over the United States to represent Out of Our Minds at film festivals. The people I got to meet, the celebrities, all of it was just, I couldn't have done it alone. It was just amazing. And a lot of the things that I didn't realize I sort of carried some negative energy until I actually was exposed to the kind of successes. And what I mean by that is the studio basically did some incredible storytelling, and it got awards, and it took the whole team to not only make it, but to enter it into the festivals and stuff. And I realized that I had some growing up to do because I didn't actually imagine us having that kind of success. And it sort of was a mirror that it's like, oh, I could probably work better with my team now that they've sort of shown me that it's what's possible, and that sometimes the hurdles are in our minds.
Yeah.
So I wish everyone that was in our studio was able to go to all those film festivals with me, and kind of learn some of the same lessons, I guess, from that. And so it's a remarkable time, and Danny reminded me that it was 20 years ago that I sat behind Johnny Depp on the 10th row in London for our first film was nominated. And I carried along DVDs, and I was able to give a copy to Tim Burton and who's our Lord of the Rings guy?
Peter Jackson.
Peter Jackson. And I just realized it's like, all these people are just like us. We've elevated them to a higher level. But these sort of festivals and these award shows, it's like, Peter Jackson is worried about, reaching out to his kids who are still in New Zealand, making sure they get to bed on time and all this stuff. So that's really amazing. Andrew Stanton, our film was in a Stars, the Channel Stars Award. Both Andrew Stanton and I got an award, or Out of Our Minds got an award. So I got a photo next to Andrew Stanton. And for those that don't know, Andrew Stanton is the director of Finding Nemo at Pixar and some other films. Been there for a long time. So you would think he's a big shot. But when he stood next to me to hold the award for the photo, he turned and said, "Guys, wait up. I'll be right there." And he sounded like a little kid, just like any of us, Don't leave without me. And it was like, oh, there's the perception that people, that are in entertainment and stuff have some sort of secret power or superhuman. And no, they're committed to what they do, and it's a craft. But in the end of the day, they're not, beyond any of the rest of us. We all have the same human value. So that was a nice example, I guess, of actually seeing is believing, because I'm telling you now, but until you actually see, like, oh, it's just normal people that, happen to have roles that are, in positions of leadership, and, oh, they're just like you and me.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we don't realize how much we are, in our mind, filling in the gaps of imagination. I guess that's why they say, don't meet your heroes. I guess that's where that term comes from. But in the case of all the folks I've met in film festivals, they're decent people. So that's just one major thing that I never thought I would have done, just sitting at a drafting table drawing characters and drawing storyboards, that it would actually, leapfrog to the front of the line, so to speak. And, you're sitting with the other people that have product, that is up for awards. And so I couldn't have ever dreamed it without the help of everybody at Out of Our Minds. So I really want to credit not only Danny, but John Cernak, the owner, in the early days, to just really have the vision and go for it. He's someone you should have on your show as well, because
All right.
he took his football leadership and said, let's apply some of the strategies someone would play as a football coach to our endeavor, the artistic endeavor. So I hope I've stayed on the question, but I will say the film festival, it makes me yearn for us to get back in the game, so that we have something in the next 5 or 10 years, so that we can do this all over again.
So how do you define character?
Well, I think character is not necessarily something we carry on our sleeve. It's integrity. It can be, not necessarily a rush to be won over or swayed by. It's basically having a level-headedness to this crazy thing called life. I feel like maybe everyone else, but I feel like I'm constantly on a learning journey to bolster my character, to believe in my, character. We don't necessarily start off with all the character traits. And that's where I salute you, Matt, for, shepherding this, so that we can all be reminded of what character, the traits of character. There are people in my life that I point to as having, very strong character. And sometimes there are things in my life where I go, oh, I wish I had exhibited more character, when sometimes we get overwhelmed and stuff. But I see character as integrity, as not a rush to judgment on things that are maybe, when life events happen and things move very fast. I think character helps us take a breath and not get swept up in events where we lose the long game or the long point of view, or I guess the 50,000 foot view, or basically God's point of view. I think character helps us keep a calm head when things are, when things are a maelstrom of chaos. And that's when character reveals itself, is when things, a lot of times we don't see it until we need it. But of course, character can be in everyday life, just being decent to one another, and giving, not auto, our phones autofill spell check for us. A lot of times we, as people, when we're around other people in other situations, we do a lot of auto correcting, autofill of like, well, this person was rude, but maybe we don't know that they're in pain, So I think I define character as having strong beliefs, but in the day-to-day, having some grace on, and not being swayed by little slights, being the bigger person, even if you sometimes feel slighted and your feelings get hurt. I wish I had a smaller, more succinct elevator pitch on character, but I don't get asked that a lot. And it's maybe, being invited on this show has made me really think about it. So I try to give it a lot of time when you, with your pre-questions.
Yeah.
And I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah, it's a very good definition, I might say. So please tell us a story of witnessing in person or in history someone who is a true phoenix, a role model, leading by example and making the world a better place.
Well, one of the things that I occurred to me was remarkable to me in this. I did get this question ahead of time, and I had time to think about it. And I wrote that my brother-in-law is a Garner police officer, and he had to step away. It might have been in 2002 or whatever. We had an event, and he had to step away from the family event. I was like, well, where are you heading? And he said, well, we're setting up a festival, a meet and greet for the police and the migrant population that is here in Garner working, as in migrant labor. And it's an event. And I said, really? Who did that? And he said, well, I set it up. And it was like, well, why did you do that? And he said, well, this is a population that this is the best way to introduce ourselves to this population that might feel alienated. And maybe the only time they see a police officer is when something bad is going on. And where it struck me is that my brother-in-law is a very quiet person, does not advertise any of this, and I had to pull that kind of information out of him. That's the kind of thing that with someone who was perhaps wanted to advertise it, they would be more vocal about what they were doing. But he just quietly did it. And to me, that was a very Phoenix thing to do, a very proactive, the emblem says to serve and protect. And I would say he epitomized the serve portion of that by proactively creating an event where it was a pleasant event. It was a fellowship building event. And that's, for 20 years, that is just, stuck with me. And I didn't realize it until the question was asked in your, pre-question. It was just under the surface. So thank you for scratching the surface and helping me reveal that.
Yeah, that is quite an amazing story. I'll tell you that right now. So, please share a moment that stands out in your mind. One where you had a significant impact on an individual's life or on a group of people.
Well, going back to the film festival aspect, these film festivals took place all over the country and even outside of the country. And these film festivals would organize school field trips where festival attendees, filmmakers, could speak to local elementary schools and high schools. And I think that's an area where, again, the humanizing of this art form, where, making the people that participate professionally in this can field questions and just be present with youngsters who are, interested in this field and want to share what, their drawings and what they're working on. That to me is a example of wonderment, I guess, where people's imagination can have some validation. I mean, they have it anyway, but having professionals look at it. So I like that, and I've had beautiful thank you letters written, and it's always been very heartfelt and heartwarming to get positive feedback, because sometimes you just don't know what kind of message, if your message is being heard, because a lot of times when people are listening, they're not talking. And some of the sweet letters I've gotten from people of all ages has sort of given me some warm feelings that, being present and making the time to share with students, it captures everyone's imagination that's there, and again, doesn't make it a mystery of how this stuff takes place, and that we're just people like everyone else, and it takes determination and wonderment, all of that, all the things. So that's where I'm happy to say that, yeah, I guess I'm a little bit of a phoenix when it comes to, maybe inspiring another generation.
All right. So this week I want to talk about 3 character traits, and they are respect, responsibility, and empathy. And to begin with respect, there's actually a story about how important person-to-person conversations are, and it has. And the story you want to tell has to do with a road rage incident, right?
Yeah. Well, some of my coworkers travel on the highway to work and stuff. They're always pretty every day sharing a story of, something bad, happened, someone's rude, and
Mm-hmm.
and of course this happens pretty much to everyone who drives daily. And one time I got pretty peeved because I was cut off going, in a residential road. And the more I thought about it, the more my energies went into like, oh, I wish I could draw this. Oh, I can. I can see the angle right now because, I can pretty much picture the whole comic of how things went down and have all the angles correct and have it very legible. And then I was like, well, I want to see my reaction in this comic book frame. Well, now we need to go into the other person's car that was the bad person. And the more I started imagining how that bad person, initially wronged me, the more I started becoming interested in like, well, what does this person look like? Why would they do such a thing? And the more I started rolling that around in my head as like what this comic would look like, I realized that suddenly the adrenaline just sort of drifted away, and I realized, oh, this person has nothing out against me. this person made a mistake, and there was no intentional harm being perpetrated. So
Right.
it sort of gave me a sense of self-reflection to calm down and to see from the point of view of 100 or 50,000 feet looking down, and it took away a lot of my sense of being insulted or being disrespected, and it made me also, as I was thinking about this, made me realize that many years ago someone had done a slow motion of pedestrians bumping into each other as they crossed a busy street, and they slowed it down and realized when someone did a faux pas, they caught each other's eye glance, and that was enough to diffuse the situation, to show that there was no harm being done. It was just an accident. And they say that, I just remember this, that they said, in a car, we're behind a windshield, we're behind these 4,000-pound machines, and we don't have the ability to show that we're sorry. And so it kind of pointed to, as humans, we don't really have a mechanism to diffuse situations when someone has an accident or makes a mistake on the road the way that we do when we have person-to-person interactions. And that's always stuck with me, and I think I mentioned that maybe that's also why social media can get so scrambled, is because we're not really in the same room, but we get the illusion sometimes that we're there, and we often feel outraged that someone would say something so off the wall. And so that's kind of the respect part, is having the grace to give everyone respect, even when sometimes our feelings are contrary to the feelings of being insulted or being spoke to rude. The respect to just know that to take that deep breath and to not devolve where you're no longer, to go into disrespect mode, even though you may be disrespected or may feel disrespected.
All right. We are I don't think we have much time left, but with the time we do have, I want to talk about responsibility and empathy. Now, you mentioned as a husband and a parent, the all-in on responsibility is something you could never have imagined in the before times. Explain that to me.
Yeah. Well, I'm picking up my daughter. It was right now. I wouldn't think twice about it, even though it was an unplanned pickup. And of course, it's something that is a must do as a parent, but it's not on paper. I mean, it's just part of being a parent. The responsibility is built into it. And so there are just things before parenthood and before marriage that levels of giving within my family that it's just, you can't really imagine or convey it verbally to anyone until they've experienced it. And I think that's really where responsibility on how I act and how I represent my family, carry myself, all those things just turn a corner when you have other people that you're responsible for. So that's kind of my responsibility angle.
Yeah, it's actually a great angle on responsibility. I really enjoyed that. Now, the last question I want to talk about is empathy. Now, you mentioned that before you met your wife and her family, you were obsessed with tough love time.
Yeah.
Explain that to me.
Yeah, well, we hear about it. It's, when people are, suffering or they're not doing what they're supposed to, it's no, we're all not strangers to the word tough love. It's just like,
Mm-hmm.
look, you're going to have to, just create a tough love situation where you just don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
You pull back or that's the breaks. It's tough love. And what I found when I met my family, my wife's family, is that they really taught me that there's also a place for love. And I was so obsessed with tough love that I think I forgot that there's actually genuine love that you also need to be present for. And that's a different state of mind. And I didn't realize I was sort of lacking that, that there's a place to actually show your emotion, show your feeling love, and I guess go with, grace. And I think I'd always just assumed that the love was there, but until I actually saw what real empathy, real caring looks like, I went, well, maybe I'm being a little too much of a bean counter on, keeping a score on where I think maybe people are not pulling their weight or and just giving giving my feedback loop of, well, you did this, so this is going to be taken away. And what I've witnessed is that that's a mode that it's hard to be both in a love mode and a tough love mode at the same time. And so there's a place for both. And I think I had just never really fostered the actual sharing and empathy and caring and the love part of it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's just my shorthand of it. There's tough love and then there's good old love. So that's what I mean. I just contrast the two. Think of a grandparent, how they spoil a grandchild.
Right.
There's a place for that. And that's not necessarily what the parent needs to do, but yeah, for the grandparent, have at it, and so being okay with those kinds of separate rules for grandparents versus parents versus a coach or, a teacher, I that's where I've sort of grown as well.
Yeah. That's a good definition of empathy, by the way, for all of our viewers. So,
Yeah, I would agree.
yeah. So before we close, please share with us your thoughts on how we can bring character back into our culture.
Well, we need to, I think we need to, there's a saying that we make caricatures of people that in our lives, or people outsiders or people on the inside. We make caricatures, we cartoonify.
Right.
And that's a nice shorthand, but we can often, again, kind of like your phone doing auto spell or autocorrect on your spelling, we can sometimes get it wrong and be too quick to cartoonify people we disagree with. It could be the same for people that disagree with us. They cartoonify, us. I mean, it's so creating opportunities where we could show what we have in common, as a bigger human race. I think those kinds of opportunities, there needs to be more of them. And I think I mentioned that, when a tornado hits a Midwestern town, sometimes, it's a devastation, but often I hear words like, oh, I wish, the whole town got together and was unified in their, purpose. Why can't we be like that all the time? Why does it take a tornado? And so that's the question. Why do we have to manufacture things where we have to create situations where there is that proverbial tornado? But I think things like fasting, things like having strong religious beliefs and practices that go for many generations and stuff that show a consistency. Those areas can help us remember that we're not all tough guys. There's a fragileness, and we're all in our own way still sheep and still babes, and that we have much more in common than we ever do not in common. And so then when a tornado hits a small town, and everyone realizes, oh, we're all in the same boat together. So reminders of that, it's not ever going to be one fix, but we need to be, part of our practice is to be reminded of how much we do have in common and to take care of one another.
All right. Keith Hobgood, artist, illustrator, the co-founder of Out of Our Minds Animation Studios, and the illustrator of the Phoenix series of children's books. Keith, thanks for being on Character in Action.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Character in Action is a co-production of Firebird Media and the 7 Degrees of Change Foundation. Your host is me, Matthew J. Norcross. The show is produced by Robbie Dillman, who also does the intro, with additional help this week from Carmen Ramirez. Special thanks to everyone at the Truth Network. One quick note before we go. Character in Action will be taking a hiatus for the rest of the year and through the first half of next January, as I'm preparing to go on vacation in Europe with my family. But we'll be back next year with more guests and more fascinating conversations about how these guests use good character. Thank you for listening. Have a great holiday season, and always remember, everyone can be a phoenix.